Welcome you to our weekly briefing. I have 3 issues about. The first one relates to land. The Forum for Democratic Change would like to once again caution Mr. Museveni against employing populist measures to resolve land conflicts in the country. His latest aggressive and unrelenting attack on the country's land tenure system is causing an unnecessary tension and insecurity. Mr. Museveni should forthwith stop politicizing land problems in the country. The content of his recent statements to NRM leaders, in which he attacked Mairo land tenure system and declared the Buganda land board illegal, should be ignored because it is a recipe for violence and will drive the population into breaking the law. You know, in the past, the president has been inciting the population. There was time he said the population should fight landlords. I remember he even started a radio station and he said this radio station is for the landless people to fight for themselves. That's how radio stars of you who are young started. And I was at the inauguration as a journalist of that radio station, inaugurated by Dr. Special who was the vice president then. And Museveni said that radio station was going to be given to Iwanja holders to fight for themselves. And by the way, they did. In Mukono, there is a group that was arrested together with the LC because they beat up and killed a surveyor. In the area where I am an MP, if you came to the area of Morawa, the entire LC administration, together with about 20 people, I went to remove them for yourselves. I mean, it can't be a president that is advocating for lawlessness. But that happened, the president inciting the population and the population taking up arms to fight landlords, some in some areas, and they ended up being charged with murder, they ended up going to Ruzira. Now Mr. Museveni has started again, and that's how he started in 2010 with an amendment on the Land Act. Of course, later he clashed with the Buganda Kingdom, but at least he had started the rhetoric much earlier. So I'd like to caution him not to politicize land-related problems in Uganda. In our view as a party, we think poverty, the surging population, and impunity of well-connected individuals are the main cause of the latest conflicts and land wrangling in Uganda. So the Museveni statement in which he says Buganda land board is illegal, Mairo land we should have only 3 systems, can only exacerbate the problem. You need to understand that the first time Uganda carried out a population census in 1969, that's when as a country after independence we carried out the first population census. Uganda was 9.5 million people. That is 1969. This whole country was 9.5 million people. By the time my parents went to settle in Chazanga, that whole area was empty. When I was a student at Masaka Secondary School, we used to drive to Mbarara. The whole of Nekongore was a park. Today all of it is occupied. The animals have gone away to Lake Imburo, far away from the main road. But it used to be dangerous driving on that road to Mbarara during certain times of the day or night. But that's a point I want to explain, that the surging population, poverty, and impunity is what is causing conflicts on land in Uganda. 1969, we are 9.5 million people. In 1980, another population census was done. Another time, we were 12.6 million people, 1980. Of course, the number kept multiplying until when we did another census in 2002. But by 2014, you can imagine from 9.5 million people, 2014 we had become 34.6 million people. The land comprising a country called Uganda, it remains the same. The kilometers remain the same, but the population is increasing. Today, UBOS projects with an annual 3% population growth that Uganda is 44 million people. And you can keep multiplying by 3%. In 20 years, we will be 80 million people. The size of the land is going to remain the same. My father produced 46 children. He was alone. The fertility rate in Uganda, fertility rate, one of the highest in the world, is 5.8 children per woman. That's the fertility rate in Uganda. You go to Europe, it is not even one child per family. They are even giving incentives for people to produce. But the fertility rate in Uganda, the number of births per woman, 5.8. So you can multiply how many women in Uganda, if each one of them produced 5.8 or 6 children, how big this country will be in 1 decade to come or 2 decades. So therefore, any sane leader and government must be dealing with these demographic problems instead of inciting the population, citing the 1900 Buganda agreement. So the population is increasing. Museveni is still living in history, because there was an episode in our time when land was given to some people. Even if you confiscate land, say from the Kabaka of Uganda, and redistribute it out from all the land owners, like the church, tensions and conflicts will remain because of the sheer size of our population. With a growing population, big percentage of it poor, because the latest UBOS figures show that poverty has increased from 19% to 21%, which means in this country we have at least about 8 million people who are very poor, who can't buy land. Even if you give it to them, they will sell it. So the moment you deal with this high percentage of poor people and impunity of highly connected people, you will never resolve these land conflicts. Look, Museveni himself has 80 villages he's occupying in Chisos. 80 villages. His farm sits on 80 villages. So even if you get Museveni's land and distribute it, interestingly, the one occupying 80 villages is the one who is complaining that there are landlords in Uganda with big chunks of land, and this land he didn't own until he became a president, because part of that land used to be owned by National Enterprises Corporation that bought from Haji Kasim of Chisos. So Museveni, if he wants land distribution like it happened in Zimbabwe, let him surrender his farm, settle people there, redistribute, and then you ask other land owner in the country to do the same. But even that won't resolve the land conflict. So the solution that we think as FDC, apart from industrialization, is to grow the economy, grow the service sector. That's what people do. The 7th Parliament even enacted what they called the Condominium Property Act. That Condominium Property Act allows people to build skyscrapers, and on each floor you can issue titles. Instead of having land titles, you can go on issuing titles per floor until the 20th or 30th. Because the Parliament and government, by the way, run by Museveni, envisage the situation where it will no longer even be possible to fit on the land as it is. So you begin building going up. And that's what should be happening in towns. Instead, the president says, you abolish land, you go and aggressively mobilize the population against landlords. That's what Mr. Museveni is advocating. Mr. Museveni should be embarrassed that after 35 years in power, you have 68% of your population still living on subsistence farming. people are surviving on land, tilling and cutting matoke and eat and go to sleep. And if you continue that way with the biggest percentage of the population depending on agriculture, and not agriculture, actually subsistence farming, the conflicts are bound to happen. And I can assure you, no amount of radio stations Museveni will open up, no amount of talking that will resolve land problems. So in our view, the latest attack is unnecessary, uncalled for. The country needs to deal with the real problems affecting the population. The second point that I want to address is in the region. We've spoken about this before. And the violence, of course, at least 5 countries, some very close to our borders, others a bit far, are experiencing violence. Countries like DRC, South Sudan, Sudan of Khartoum, Ethiopia, Somalia, and these are countries not verified. I don't want to list all the African countries. If you look at all these countries, the common denominator is that they were all run at one time by life presidents. Bashir ruled Sudan for 29 years, close to 30 years, 3 decades. Mobutu Sese Seko, 25 years in charge of Congo. Some people put it to 30. Meles Zenawi ruled Ethiopia for 17 years. Siad Barre ruled Somalia 21 years. So all these leaders, the common denominator is that they had some declared, others did not declare themselves life presidents. And they were all removed from power. None of them went peacefully. Mobutu was removed in 1997 by Banyamulenge, Kabila, Uganda, Rwanda. Bashir was removed by the population. So is Siad Barre. So is now, you remember the protest in Ethiopia. So these guys wanted to rule their countries for life until they were removed by either the population or the military or a combination. So as FDC, we want to give Museveni free advice. Because the other day he was calling a meeting of the East African to discuss conflicts in Ethiopia. For Uganda to avoid this, we will need to dialogue out of the situation that we are in. Because nobody has survived it. I don't want to give countries that are far away from us, Libya, Egypt, and so on. But all the countries that at one time were ruled by strong men who think that ruling a country is part of their birthright, they all have ended up with the same problems. First, the governments there have been removed, and in the process of removing, the state institutions affected by the life president schemes, wherever they are, have affected these institutions and left these countries with no institutions. As FDC, we have said, and I want to reiterate that we will be willing to participate in a honest and transparent dialogue to get Uganda out of this situation, because we think, as day follows night, we are on our way to where Ethiopia is, to where Khartoum is, to where Congo is, because there are all signs. You can't become a life president ruling a country for 4 decades like Museveni is aspiring now, weakening state institutions and personalizing everything, and you think the end is going to be good. To avoid violence, we would like to ask Mr. Museveni, he will need to tame his appetite for power and begin a dialogue like it has happened in many other countries. Because ask yourself, Tanzania, with all their problems, who have been changing leaders, they don't experience the same violence like you see in other countries. Even in Kenya, I think in 2002 is when they had violence after elections, but they are able to live with it and resolve their own problems. In Uganda, we are postponing the problems each cycle of the election. Museveni will beat the population, hand out, and then he will come to power. And I saw him in Koro saying he was elected. In which election? In an election where you beat up everybody and you declare yourself a winner, and then you say, I was elected. Finally, the third issue is the vaccination program. Our concern is the continual lack of clarity on which policy we are following as a country. throughout this pandemic, Museveni has been insisting that Uganda is going to manufacture vaccines. And that is the reason he handed out, if he did, 31 billion shilling to his newfound lovely Minister of Science and Technology, Museveni, veterinary doctor. 31 billion for a veterinary doctor to go and manufacture vaccines for Uganda. In this supplementary, the one that is before Parliament, this supplementary, I know we've had a discussion. Museveni wants another 50 billion. She wants another 50 billion shilling for vaccine manufacturing. 31 billion already gone, another 50 billion in this emergency window financing, 50 billion to go to Museveni for vaccine manufacturing. Yet in the budget, government budgeted for 560 billion shilling to buy vaccines. By December, if you remember what Museveni said, we will have received vaccines that can vaccinate 11 million people. The target of this government is that we need to vaccinate 22 million people. By December, through donations mainly, we will have. Even the 560 billion, we may not need it. Every day I read in the newspapers, Norway has donated vaccine, America has donated vaccine. I think what has happened now, the COVID is being turned into an enterprise. Because it's easier to blackmail Parliament and blackmail the population. We need vaccine. Who will refuse vaccine? We want to open up the economy. We need vaccines very quickly. We are being given vaccines almost now by everybody. The developed countries having exhausted their population. So the vaccines have become available. In fact, even if we don't buy any, they will continue coming in. Because these vaccines expire. The ones who are holding vaccines now are the ones donating. Almost each and every country now wants to donate. We've received donation from UK, from France, from Germany, from Norway now, from America, from World Health Organization. I suspect in the next 5 years, the donations might even be more than what we need as a country. We are spending money. I don't know who that Museveni vaccine will vaccinate. Because if you have donations that are covering the entire population, but you're also buying to cover 22, and that is your target, but you're also spending money to manufacture, I think Museveni needs to tell the country who that vaccine that he himself will manufacture with Museveni will vaccinate. Otherwise, and Minister of Health is not involved. And it's not surprising that Museveni go to Museveni and the ministry and took them to State House. That's where Museveni operates from, State House. So that ministry was removed. He actually said he had abolished it, only to introduce it in the State House. Even the money that she's asking in the supplementary is under State House. It is not under Ministry of Science and Technology. It is indicated as State House. If you want, you can look at these copies. So we are concerned, if the 50 is approved by Parliament, that will be 81 billion shilling for vaccine manufacturing for a country that is receiving vaccines which we are even unable to exhaust at the moment. Because if you ask, don't we have vaccines now? Are they exhausted? We have not. Because their vaccination plan is shaky. But we want to spend money to manufacture vaccine, receive vaccines, buy. I want to thank you very much. If there are questions, I can take them now. In discipline, not only the one of Museveni. If you look at the items under this supplementary, you can really see, because supplementary under the Public Finance Management Act supposed to be for unforeseen, unavoidable. First of all, you do not know that these things will happen, but even after happening, they are unavoidable. You must deal with them there and then. But look at the list. What is there that is unavoidable? We are going to give a MENA of Atiak sugar, 180 billion for sugar cane mechanized farming. We are going to give Museveni 50 billion to go and manufacture vaccine. So there are many items there. For me, I don't see. So therefore, as this, first of all, we don't support this indiscipline, blackmailing everybody and then having a budget and don't following the budget. When we are looking at Chira Motors, and I sit on the committee on budget, Chira Motors was given 70 billion shilling, that is the 77, their budget. They have not received a single shilling from Minister of Finance. They want 149 billion through supplementary. The 77 they haven't used, even a shilling. In the remaining 6 months of this financial year, they want another 141 billion. So there it's just confusion.